Hello viewers and welcome to another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm honored to present you with the third week's featured match of Sam Mann's Black Crusade Online Conquest LCG Competitive League. Today we are in for one hell of a game because we have a good friend of mine, Guy, up at the top, playing as our original Space Marines faction Warlord, Captain Cato Sicarius, and at the bottom we're going to be seeing none other than Corvus, whom has won, I believe, 3 out of the 4 thus far completed Online Conquest LCG Championship. So Corvus is a hell of a player. He's a very, very experienced Packmaster Kith. She's an extremely competitive Warlord. It's generally considered by many within our community that Captain Cato Sicarius happens to be a reasonable matchup to try to best Kith, whom possesses something like a maybe 60% or so win rate. Cato himself generally sitting around 50%, but, you know, Warlord versus Warlord, those numbers do vary dramatically. It looks as though both of our players have decided to keep their opening hands in assessing what Guy has at his disposal. He's got a Tactical Squad Cardenas, which is going to be incredibly valuable to try to kill off some of the myriad chimeras that Packmaster Kith is going to be able to generate. Blood Angels Veterans is very powerful, and he's also got some incredible Space Marines faction events, Drop Pod Assault, Indomitable, Exterminatus, and who doesn't like seeing Void Pirate in their opening hand here? But to the chagrin of our Space Marine player, the opening deploy of Corvus is going to be a copy of Siren Zithlex, positioned at planet number 1, which is Ossus 4. Notably, the earliest any player could possibly win the game is going to be our current planet number 4, but I definitely don't think it's in Corvus's nature to play a very aggressive game. I think he likes to take his time, likes to be very thoughtful, play slow and methodically, and his win rate definitely represents some absolutely fantastic plays. So we've got a copy of Raid here being played by Corvus. That's going to be -1 resource for Guy, +1 resource for Corvus. We've now got a Void Pirate for Captain Cato Sicarius played out to planet number 4, and that copy of Siren Zithlex is very frustrating at the first planet because she's not only a 2/3 with command, but whenever an enemy unit is deployed to her planet, it does so exhausted. So it's not going to be contributing command icons, it's not going to be able to attack during the first round of combat. In assessing the remainder of Packmaster Kith's hand, we've got some incredible Dark Eldar faction staples. Her signature event really isn't the best thing in the world to see, but we've got a copy of Kith's Chimera Masters. It itself is going to be a body. It also generates a Chimera token, so it's winning command. It's 2 targets for your opponent to attempt to kill off, and then we've also got a 2 shield icon card. We've got an Incubus Warrior that could conveniently trump that Void Pirate put out to planet number 4, but note that Guy has put that Void Pirate at a very low-value planet, kind of to serve as a bit of a deterrent. I can only imagine to deter Kith from showing up at that planet only to kill off his unit. Guy has his Blood Angels Veterans positioned at planet number 3, that is Planum. Should he win a battle at that planet, it's going to afford him some fantastic action advantage in being able to move one of his units from that eventually first planet to any other planet, and considering that our first 2 planets are single icon worlds, I could definitely see Guy playing a little bit of a long game, and especially as we see this copy of the Kith's Chimera Masters put out to planet number 2, Siren Zithlex sitting at planet number 1, and our Space Marine is setting himself up nicely at planets 3, 4, and 5. If he himself is going to play a longer game than Kith, try to make the absolute utmost out of Captain Cato Sicarius' resource generation ability, provided that Kith cannot block off all of his card draw, our Space Marine could be looking to be in a pretty decent position. I think that something our Kith player is definitely going to be keeping in mind is trying to block off the card draw for Captain Cato, but note, planet number 3 is going to be potentially 1 card for Guy, same thing with planet 2, same thing for planet number 3, so Guy's probably trying to do his best to at least spread out his card draw. I wouldn't be shocked to see Cato show up at Eloith, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kith herself go to Eloith just to make sure that that planet is on lockdown. I guess if that does happen, that could be a fair few units for Captain Cato to try and chew through. You know, I guess the dream scenario would be doing a drop pod assault at planet number 2, pulling attack squad Cardenas, blowing up a couple Chimera, killing the Chimera Masters, and then maybe sending Kith retreating. But I don't necessarily think that's too tremendously likely. And in regard to what Kith herself has, Kith has this copy of Archon's Terror at her disposal. We actually see a copy of Suffering played out onto that Blood Angels veteran, so that's probably something you see, I don't know, maybe 20% of the time or so, relative to Suffering traditionally being used as shields, but Blood Angels veterans is a hell of a unit, and if Kith is playing very much a command game, just one resource dropping the BAV to a 1/3, it can, shirk off as much damage as it wants. It's definitely not much of a threat anymore. But let's see where our players decide to send their warlords. We did end up seeing that copy of the Incubus Warrior put out opposite that Void Pirate, so Cato is going to have to show up someplace where he's going to try to want to win himself cards, are probably more desirable than our resources given his economy ability, and Kith is either going to try to lock down Eloith, benefit from that battle ability, or just try to do something a little bit clever here. So looks like Kith is going for just as much economic denial as possible, as much income as possible. Kith is going to be showing up at planet number 3 opposite that Blood Angels veteran, which is only going to be itself attacking for 1. That means Kith is going to reel in 1 card and 1 resource over the BAV, and Captain Cato Sicarius himself is positioned at planet number 1 to try to kill off this copy of Siren Zithlex. Zithlex is going to be pretty frustrating in a sense because it'll be able to stomach at least 1 swing from Cato, but our Dark Eldar player definitely didn't pull in much regarding just shield cards. That Archon's Terror and that Pact of the Homunculi are the only options here, and it looks like our players, I believe, did not opt to resolve command struggles 1 by 1, so that's going to be a total of 3 cards, 2 resources for Corvus, and instead just 1 card and 2 resources for Guy. He came across a copy of Void Pirate, which definitely isn't bad to see, given Kith's predilection for card choke. We've got combat occurring at the first planet. That's going to be Captain Cato Sicarius taking a swing of 2 at Siren Zithlex. Will she herself stay at that planet, or will she retreat? Looks like she's going to be attacking Cato, and then the only question in my mind, okay, we see a copy of Exterminatus discarded as shields, which is going to be very interesting. That just means 1 point of damage on Cato. Now we're going to come to the end of the combat round, and I can only imagine that Siren Zithlex will be retreating unless Corvus really wants to end up drawing an additional copy of Siren Zithlex to play. And as I didn't presume that's the case, looks like it indeed is not. Siren Zithlex is going to retreat, so during this upcoming round's deploy phase, she's not going to be present at any planets. Cato is going to be able to capture Ossus 4. That's going to be -1 resource for Corvus, +1 resource for Guy. He did not have the opportunity to kill any units, but we're now going to see battle erupt at Planum. It's going to be this Blood Angels veterans having the opportunity to try to kill off Packmaster Kith and her associated Chimera token. So the BAV itself is going to be blocking 1 point of damage thanks to this token, but we could see our Blood Angels Terminators here take a swing, potentially killing off that Chimera token, and each and every token that you can manage to kill is going to be fantastic, even though Cato's not going to be generating resources, just because if Corvus, with drawing a bunch of cards, manages to come across a copy of Chimera Den, if you've got 6 or more Chimera tokens that can all be relocated to 1 planet during a convenient action window, that could be an absolute nightmare. So that Chimera token did successfully get destroyed. Now, Now, is Corvus going to take a swing and potentially kill off the Blood Angels veterans? I can only imagine that the answer is indeed yes. Corvus confirms my suspicion by exhausting his unit. That's going to be a dead Blood Angels veterans. And now Corvus is going to have the opportunity to relocate one of his non-Warlord units. Specifically, Siren Zithlex is going to be my guess. He's already picked up one green. Okay, so looks like I spoke a little bit too soon. We've got a drop pod assault being played. Note, Glaive Guy has enough resources to afford an Indomitable, so I would imagine the best thing he could hope for would be something like an Honored Librarian, or considering that Kith has the initiative, I suppose a Blood Angels veterans would be ever so slightly better. Note, Archon's Terror is in Corvus's hand, but thanks to that Ossus, holy mother of God, that is an Honored Librarian, and thanks to that Ossus foreplay, one resource is an insufficient number for Kith to actually use her Archon's Terror, so this could be an absolute nightmare. If Kith is going to be forced to move away from this planet, that's going to be Planum being triggered by our Space Marine, and then we could relocate this Honored Librarian absolutely anywhere, and very importantly is we wouldn't be able to see Siren Zithlex being repositioned at, say, any planet that's potentially fuels whatever victory condition that Kith is going for or just wants to win command at. So we come to the end of a combat round here. And if Kith stays at this planet, she is going to be bloodied, so it looks like it's going to be up to Kith to kind of accept the inevitable and retreat. Indomitable, Guy certainly has one resource to pay for it. Even if he didn't, he could discard it as shields, and there we see the retreat for Kith. A little bit of a conservative play on Corvus's part, but nevertheless an intelligent play. But that is a lot of early game damage on Packmaster Kith, and as soon as she is bloodied, I believe she drops to, at best, a 2/5 Warlord, and if she can suddenly no longer generate a Chimera token, then that definitely hurts. Note that we saw the Void Pirate relocated away from the planet Yavvarn, where it's no longer just going to be shut down by this Incubus Warrior, so the Incubus Warrior can generate one resource during each command phase all day, every day, I'm sure, so far as Guy is concerned, but cards much more valuable than resources when you're playing as Cato, and something you definitely want to be able to see is just, I guess, a Void Pirate at a planet where it's entirely uncontested. So, looks like we saw the end of an HQ phase, and there's a little bit of issue with the Octagon automation. Alright, so it looks like we had to take just a moment to kind of figure out a little bit of confusion. It's been quite a while since we've had any trouble with the Octagon automation being kind of screwed up, but when I first entered this game, there was some flipping back and forth between spectator and player, and somewhere along the line, the automation itself got screwed up, but both of our players have corrected the error. It seems as though we're going to be adjusting the initiative token, the first planets, manually, and then also collecting cards and resources manually as well. So, to kind of catch things up a bit, we just went through an HQ phase. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. Notably, the only player with a planet type icon is Glaive Guy. He's got one green strong point icon. For his turn, he came across a copy of the Fury of Sicarius and Tense Negotiations. That signature event probably isn't going to be too tremendously useful, considering that the only thing on the table eligible to be destroyed by that event has 2 hit points, but we've got that copy of Void Pirate out to our new planet number 5, which is Karnath, the trigger the battle ability of any other planet on the battlefield planets. We've got a second copy of Kith's Chimera Masters now put out to that planet number 5, and very interestingly, we've now got a copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas. So if Kith shows up at that planet, that's going to be an absolute death sentence for her and any Chimera tokens that show up, and I can only imagine that that's going to be something that was done not only to protect the Honored Librarian, but to make absolute certain that Kith does not go to that planet to try to set up for anything else, provided that Captain Cato Sicarius can potentially win at Planum, potentially win at Yavvarn or Iridial, where he's already got one sitting unit. We could definitely see our Space Marine steal the game out from our repeated time, many time champion here, Corvus. And for Corvus's own draw step, he came across a copy of Solarite Avetus. It's, I don't exactly want to say a community maligned card, but it's definitely something which doesn't see play too often in the context of a Clavex War Leader containing meta. And then we also see another very interesting card, the Divisive Superiority. So whenever a command struggle is beginning at a planet, you can pick and choose a target army unit at that planet and basically blank all of its command icons. But the only place that this would be relevant right now is going to be Karrnath, and I guess that could potentially allow Corvus to win a card and a resource that he otherwise wouldn't, as opposed to simply breaking even, but we'll kind of have to see how things break down here. Karrnath is going to be able to trigger the battle ability of any planet in play. It could be Elowith to draw, you know, one of the 3 cards off the top of your deck. It could be Planum to move a unit. It's probably not going to be Yavvarn, which is to put a unit into play. But then again, planet number 4 here is Iridial, and that's going to be a desirable destination for Packmaster Kith, considering she already happens to be bloodied. Glaive Guy, really all he has is a copy of Tense Negotiations, which would allow you to exhaust your Warlord to trigger the battle ability at whatever planet you happen to be located at. But if that happens, you know, there's nothing incredibly desirable that you're going to want to trigger, and then the problem in doing that is your Warlord is left exhausted, so I don't know how much use that's necessarily going to be for Cato. Both of our players are deciding where exactly they want to go. Desirable destinations here would be Kith, probably showing up no further down the line than Iridial here. She would definitely want to pursue that healing ability. Siren Zithlex would be of some use sitting at Iridial, but keep in mind that the earliest victory condition for our Space Marine faction player, who's set up pretty nicely here at Planum, is indeed going to be Yavvarn, and considering we've got that copy of Solarite Avetus in Corvus's hand, that copy of the Fury of Sicarius may actually end up coming quite in handy indeed. It's looking like this is going to be quite the command phase for our Dark Eldar player, and for his sake, he's definitely going to need to reel in a lot of resources to try to put the nail in the coffin of our Space Marine, and then for our Space Marine, he'll want to try to come across as many cards as he can, just because he's sitting on a lot of events which are powerful, but without, you know, big beefy Space Marine faction units, there's not a whole lot of good you can do to try to kill off some of these Dark Eldar. So something really convenient for Guy is that when he wins, presuming he wins this planet's Planum, the next turn, he'll be able to relocate one of his units to his victory condition planets. We could even see Cato at some point fighting at Planum, using that copy of Tense Negotiations just to relocate a couple of units, just to make sure that action advantage definitely works in his favor. But I guess I'm not really sure where Okay, I guess I didn't really have time to process it. Cato shows up at planet number 1. I was going to say I wouldn't be tremendously surprised. That's going to be not just 2 cards for Cato, but he'll be able to potentially kill off a copy of this Chimera token. He'll be able to potentially kill off this Chimera Masters. Looks like we do see that copy of Superiority played on that Void Pirate, and Kith ends up showing up at planet number 4, so she's potentially going to be able to heal. Note, Tense Negotiations is not Foretell. I always kind of mix those two, but Foretell is the card that lets you shut off a planet's battle ability. So this is going to be a lot of income here for our Dark Eldar player. Looks like a total of 3 cards, 1 resource for Guy, 2 cards, 2 resources for our Dark Eldar player. And Guy ended up getting a little bit lucky in regard to card draw. He came across another copy of the Fury of Sicarius. Note, he'll have a copy of Warlock Destructor and Solarite Avedis to try to get rid of. And he came across a second copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, which is absolutely fantastic because Corvus has got a copy of Archon's Terror in his hand. I'm sure he's going to want to get rid of at least one of these copies of Tac Squad Cardenas, especially if he comes to, find his Chimera Den, but when you've got two that you're trying to remove, that becomes a much more difficult prospect here. But Cato takes a swing at planet number 1, tries to kill off a Chimera. He is unsuccessful thanks to the very timely discard of a copy of Suffering, and now Cato is going to be at risk of being damaged by this Chimera token. I don't suppose it's the most important thing in the world for Cato to take as little damage as is possible at this point, but considering Guy's a much more practiced player than I am, I'll just be deadly curious to see if this is the time where he decides to use an Indomitable. Looks like it is. So he's going to block that damage. That's going to be the Kith's Chimera Masters taking a swing, and then I'll be rather interested to see, are the Chimera Masters and the Chimera itself going to hang around for an additional round of combat, just at the risk of throwing some more resources to our Space Marine player, but potentially being able to stack some more points of damage onto him? So Cato takes 1 point of damage from the Chimera Masters. We're going to come to the end of the combat round here. There are no tricks to be expected from our Space Marine. There's no tricks available coming from our Dark Eldar player. And now what exactly are we going to see? It's going to be Guy's opportunity to retreat first. He does not, and it looks as though we see both of those Dark Eldar units stay, which is definitely going to limit the ability for Kith to be able to kind of move next round, because she'll have at least one unit in tow. Looks like Cato is doing something a little bit devious. There's an action window prior to any combat turns taking place, so he uses this opportunity to pay 1 resource. He uses Tense Negotiations. He exhausts his Warlord to trigger Elowith's battle ability. He ends up finding something absolutely fantastic. He looks at the top 3 cards of his deck, adds 1 to his hand, which is Veteran Brother Maxos, and then puts the remaining 2 at the bottom of his deck in the order of his choice. Veteran Brother Maxos is absolutely fantastic because as a combat action, well, first of all, it's a unique unit that cannot be routed, and second of all, you just pay the printed cost of a Space Marine unit faction in your hand, and you put it into play at whatever planet he's located at. So it's looking like Cato is going to end up winning that planet. He's going to be able to trigger Elowith's battle ability twice in a row. Presuming that he wins at Planum this following turn, he's going to be able to potentially win the game at Yavvarn by putting Veteran Brother Maxos into play at that planet, being able to put any number of different Space Marine units into play at that planet, and it looks as though he was lucky enough to come across another copy of Indomitable to keep his forces alive. Something I think Corvus is going to have to do is try to hope and pray to come across a copy of that Chimera Den, or just additional copies of Archon's Terror to make sure that you can get rid of some of the enemy units here at planet number 2, well, soon to be 2, just because a big bio ball of Space Marine units is incredibly difficult to surmount, but, we've got a planet battle ongoing at planet number 4. That's going to be a 10th Company Scout destroyed by a Chimera. That's going to be the Void Pirate killed by the Chimera Masters, and now Iridial is going to be triggered. There's no foretell to prevent that effect, and I can only imagine that this is going to be Kith expunging those 3 damage tokens from herself, and indeed it is. So, as we come into an HQ phase, and this is something that I believe our players are going to have to do manually, we'll have to see how Octagon does or does not automate this process, but Looks like Corvus is uncertain as to whether or not he did or did not remember to generate a Chimera token that turn. Looks like Glaive Guy indicates that he did. So definitely a bit of a shame there. Perhaps something that would have definitely worked in Corvus's favor had he indeed remembered to do so, but just let it be a learning moment. I suppose that even the absolute best of us do make the occasional mistake now and then, just because Corvus is clearly nowhere near the 10 Chimera cap, and Taurus is nowhere present on the battlefield. But let's see here. Looks like Corvus is going to be sitting at 6 resources going into his deploy phase. That's going to be enough for Solarite Avedis and Warlock Destructor, or the Solarite and Archon's Terror, but if he does play the Solarite, he's definitely going to be setting himself up to have that destroyed thanks to the Fury of Sicarius. And let's check our automation. It looks like Corvus drew a couple cards, gained 4 resources, and now he's setting his resources. Perhaps it's looking as though it actually took care of things twice. So the automation is very peculiar indeed, and I suppose this is one of the benefits of just recording Octagon games with the same consistent crew. And then I suppose I'll just indicate for our players, did initiative change hands, just to verify we're all on the same page here. So I guess just to summarize, I believe at least for Corvus, he generated 8 resources and 4 cards instead of 4 resources and 2 cards. So definitely a bit of a shame, but I believe both of our players are at the correct totals now. So 6 resources for each player, 6 cards for Corvus, and 8 cards instead for Guy. So, Guy is very well set up at the first planet in regard to just what his deploy options are. Corvus has a Pact of the Homunculi, his signature event, and he's also got a copy of the Slith Mercenary. Our new planet number 5 is going to be pretty important because it's Barless. It's another +2 card bonus planet, which is going to be critical for the whole Dark Eldar choke playstyle, and this is something very interesting to see. 4 resources are going to be invested by Corvus into this copy of Solarite Avedis, and this is one hell of a gamble. The Solarite is after it takes damage from an attack from a non-flying unit, you deal 2 damage to the attacker. So note, Tactical Squad Cardenas can deal damage that does not count as through an attack. It would not take damage through the Solarite's reaction, but not Indomitable. The Fury of Sicarius is not going to be able to key off of that either, so we could see Honored Librarian take a swing at the Solarite, and because our Dark Eldar player doesn't hold on to a single 2-shield icon card, the Honored Librarian could effectively give its life if we don't have a shield for it, just to kill the Solarite thanks to the assistance of a Fury of Sicarius. And we could easily see another Fury or Indomitable discarded as a shield, just to make sure that the 2 HP relocatable Librarian is not killed by the Solarite's reaction. But we see a promotion put out onto the Kith's Chimera Masters, currently positioned at planet number 4. We've got a Rogue Trader and Void Pirate duo for Cato at that planet, and 2 command icons is definitely not going to be able to trump 3. We've got a 10th Company Scout put out to Barless, and that's definitely going to be an alluring target for our Dark Eldar player to try to kill off. And kind of the trick here with Corvus is he has enough resources for either a Slith Mercenary or a Warlock Destructor, but not both. And if he plays a Slith Mercenary at Barless, Glaive Guy could spend 2 resources to purchase control of that unit. But Glaive Guy himself, he's got a fair few options. We could see Sicarius is chosen, played at planet number 2 to relocate Solarite Avedis, but that's not going to be, a triggering condition for the Fury of Sicarius. Even if he had enough resources, there's no copies of Crushing Blow, which would be eligible to be combined with that reaction. So I'll just be very curious to see what Glaive Guy plays. Is he going to dump that copy of Veteran Brother Maxos onto Yvarn, just to deprive his opponent of that one resource, or is he going to try to hold on to that effect? Is Cato going to show up at planet number 1, or is Cato potentially going to show up at, I guess it could be Iridial, it could really be any number of planets. Cato, provided he does show up at Iridial, he'll be able to attack first, he'd be able to kill that copy of this Chimera token, then he could potentially take some damage from Siren Zithlex, he could take damage from the Chimera Masters, but then he could potentially swing, kill the Siren, shield against the Chimera Masters, and then we'd have the Chimera Masters retreat. Glaive Guy would be 2 resources richer, and then Iridial would proc, and then Cato would be cleansed of all damage. But there's certainly a lot of options for where our players could send their warlords. Kith is going to want to go to Barlas if we don't see another unit played out to planet number 5, but that would mean depositing 2 units at a planet where they're entirely irrelevant to your opponent's victory condition. It would be nice to do a random card discard from our Space Marine player's hand, but losing any one piece of this puzzle I don't necessarily think would be absolutely, like, just devastating necessarily to, you know, like, cost Glaive Guy the game here, but I guess let's kind of see how things unwind. Corvus is still lost in thought. He's got a Pact of the Homunculi at his disposal. If he wanted to, he could sacrifice a unit to draw a couple cards, discard 1 card at random from the opponent's hand. It looks like we're deciding to go with a Warlock Destructor, so at this point there's going to be a hell of a lot of units here positioned at planet number 1. I therefore wouldn't be tremendously surprised to see Cato show up at that planet, but if he does, he's definitely going to be in jeopardy of being kind of beaten up and bullied by the opposition, but this Archon's Terror is going to be pretty dangerous in regard to potentially kicking a unit away from that first planet. So Glaive Guy, is he going to put Veteran Brother Maxos at planet number 1? There we go. So he definitely does not want to risk losing a possible victory condition here by playing Veteran Brother Maxos. If he manages to earn any income whatsoever during the command phase, he may very well be able to come across a copy of 10th Company Scout, or really anything that could make a little bit of a difference for him. But now it's going to be absolutely critically important that Cato manages to win at least 1 resource at any of these planets. So he's looking to get a couple cards at Barlas potentially, but apart from that, he's pretty much going to have to send Cato somewhere where he can be guaranteed a resource, because if he cannot use the Fury of Sicarius, then things are going to go very poorly indeed against Solarite Avedis, and for his sake, he had better just hope and pray that Corvus does not end up coming across a 2-value shield card. We've already seen a couple copies of Suffering gone, and 1 copy of Raid, so unless Corvus is running another couple copies of Raid and a Suffering, or any other 2 shield value card, like Shadowfield or something else that happens to be kind of eluding me at the moment, things are looking pretty bad for Solarite Avedis surviving this battle. And then just through attrition, we could see the Warlock Destructor end up being killed off by some of these Space Marine units, and that Tactical Squad Cardenas could be destroyed by the Destructor, it could be routed, but of course there is an additional copy sitting here in Glaive Guy's hand. So, looks like both of our players are deciding where exactly they want to send their warlords, and this is going to be very important. Will Cato show up at the first planet? Cato does show up at the first planet. Kith shows up at the first planet as well, and therefore Tactical Squad Cardenas is going to be very important indeed. The initiative token is going to be in the possession of our Dark Eldar faction player, but look at all of these different command bonuses. Our Dark Eldar player is definitely doing incredibly well, but all the same, Cato's still going to end up with 3 cards and 1 resource for himself. There's no convenient first turn Archon's Palace to shut down our Space Marine player's economy, and therefore that's going to be a copy of Primal Howl, a Drop Pod Assault, a White Scars Bikers, some absolutely fantastic cards to see, so I can only imagine that Guy Guy is probably doing a little bit of a rejoicing happy dance inside as he comes across some pretty damn decent stuff. Corvus got 2 cards, 2 resources. It's, I believe, the 4th final copy of his signature unit, which is ridiculous in the top 18 cards or so of his deck, but then also a Void Pirate, significantly less useful, but still definitely not bad. But at this point, resources are definitely becoming a little bit of a commodity here for our Dark Eldar player. He's got just enough resources for an Archon's Terror, but then he's definitely going to be in a kind of crappy position during the following round, because whatever he ends up routing is going to be able to show up at that planet again. Glaive Guy's got 2 resources. He's got a Tactical Squad Cardenas that he could put into play thanks to Veteran Brother Maxos, probably a 1-copy card in our Space Marine player's deck, and interestingly, we've actually seen our Space Marine draw through 3 more cards than has our Dark Eldar player. But it's all going to be up to Corvus. He's got his Warlock Destructor that can attack for 3, and he's got the Solarite Avedis, which can attack for 2. What is he going to attack with first? His targets are Cato, the Honored Librarian, and the Tactical Squad. What kind of sucks for Cato is Cato's going to kind of be torn between, do you want to use Indomitable or do you want to use the Fury of Sicarius? I can only imagine we'll see Honored Librarian kill off Solarite Avedis thanks to the Fury of Sicarius, and then we'll use probably, I guess, perhaps Primal Howl discarded as shields. I think Drop Pod Assault is probably more valuable to hold on to than Primal Howl, even though you can pretty much guarantee Kith and Cato are going to be showing up at Yavvarn, and this could be an incredible opportunity here for if we have area effect resolve, like I can only imagine that Kith is going to use Archon's Terror to rout that copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, but as soon as we have an opportunity to resolve an area effect, that's potentially going to be a couple of resources for Cato. Looks like the opening gambit here is going to be a Chimera token taking a swing at Veteran Brother Maxos, and we do see a copy of Primal Howl discarded to negate that damage, and now it's all going to be up to our Space Marines. So are we going to see... Okay, so Archon's Terror removes that Tactical Squad Cardenas, but if I were Glaive Guy, I guess I would be okay with that. This is a really difficult call, because if Guy had 4 resources, then things would be absolutely perfect. So is he going to decide to go with the Tactical Squad Cardenas play, or will he do that Fury of Sicarius move? I guess I can only imagine that he'll dump a Tac Squad Cardenas into play, just because that's going to be an incredible amount of, damage. And there we go. As if it were any real choice, I'm probably needlessly concerned about Solarite Avedis for her doing very dirty things to me during the last online Conquest LCG League when I faced Corvus in the quarterfinals, and he ended up quite handily destroying my Ragnar deck thanks to the Solarite here, but Glaive Guy spends his last resources putting that unit into play, and that's going to be a single point of damage dealt out to each and every unit at that planet. Note, critically important to keep in mind, Kith only has a one shield icon card, so she can only shield 1 point of damage. That's going to be 2, well, okay, no, it's just going to be 1 dead Chimera token, but that's going to be an additional resource for Captain Cato Sicarius, and I suppose what kind of threw me up earlier is just the notion that Cato's going to be generating additional resources the longer that this battle goes, so we could see, enough resources at some point to end up putting additional Space Marines into play to end up purchasing additional copies of the Fury of Sicarius. But Warlock Destructor takes a swing at Veteran Brother Maxos. I can only imagine that there's going to be no better opportunity than to use that copy of Indomitable. There we go. Looks like our Space Marine player has a little bit of an answer for almost everything, and this is just turning out to be a pretty much incredible match. So that is going to be a very much alive Veteran Brother here, and now he could attack, Cato could attack, or we could see the Honored Librarian take an opportunity to try to kill off the Warlock Destructor, just because we've yet to see enough damage put upon the Solarite to end up potentially threatening to kill that unit. But that Warlock Destructor is going to be outright killed. That's going to be another critically important resource generated for Glaive Guy. And now at this point, note, Kith has decided to change targets. She's now trying to kill off that copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, and I mean, it's going to be absolutely just critical to get rid of that unit. Solarite Vetus is potentially going to be able to finish it off, but I guess even if it did survive until the end of the combat round, like if we saw this drop pod assault discarded to preserve the Tactical Squad Cardenas being destroyed by Solarite Vetus, Kith is still going to have an opportunity to attack prior to our Space Marine player. So Cato himself is now going to take a swing. Very interesting that we see Cato attack as opposed to veteran brother Maxos, and that's going to be a dead Chimera token, and now that's going to be 2 points of damage, or sorry, 2 resources total for Cato. So veteran brother Maxos could take a swing at Solarite Vetus. That's going to be cut in half to 1, and then we could see the Fury of Sicarius used to kill off Solarite Vetus. The Solarite herself does manage to kill off that copy of the Tactical Squad. So I'm not exactly sure earlier why I had it so stuck in my brain that it had to be the Honored Librarian to deal the attacking blow, but the veteran brother himself is going to end up taking a swing at the Solarite. Corvus adds just 1 point of damage, and that's going to be all that we need for that Fury of Sicarius trigger. There we go. So goodbye, Solarite, although its reaction is going to trigger, so that'll be 2 points of damage to veteran brother Maxos, but of course he is not destroyed. And will we see that drop pod assault to prevent a couple points of damage to him? I can imagine that we will not, but let's see how things end up being resolved. Corvus throws out the so it looks as though he's pondering the situation, and he indicates that his reaction still triggers. I surmise that it would, but certainly these players are a little bit better than I do. I guess the conflict here is that there are 2 simultaneous reactions. Just to, I guess, speak through the quandary here in my mind. So veteran brother Maxos deals a couple points of damage to Solarite Vetus. That's the triggering condition for the Solarite and the Fury of Sicarius itself, and it looks as though both of our players are at a little bit of a loss. Generally, forced reactions stop. All right, so after taking just a moment to delve into the chat and discuss this little bit of a conflict with our players, it looks as though we've ultimately decided upon the player with initiative is going to be able to have the first opportunity to trigger a reaction, and so we're going to be playing as though the Solarite is able to deal 2 points of damage to veteran brother Maxos based on the triggering condition for the Solarite and the Fury of Sicarius both being the same event. So veteran brother takes a couple points of damage. Rest assured, I'll definitely be curious to look up this exact ruling after the match, but the Solarite is going to be dead, and now things are looking pretty damn good for our Space Marine player, but we definitely don't want to get cocky. It was just a TIE fighter, but the Solarite is going to be killed. That's going to be +1 resource for Guy, and that's going to bring us to the end of a combat round. If Kith decides to stick around, she'll have the first opportunity to attack, but she definitely doesn't have much to attack with. And Planum being over means that Cato here is going to have the opportunity to relocate one of his units to any other planet, and presuming that ends up being planet number 2, then things could go incredibly well for him indeed. So we come to the end of a combat round, we ready all of our units. Is Kith going to stay or is Kith going to leave? I could definitely see Kith wanting to stay on the off chance that she could kill off that veteran brother Maxos, just because if she can't, that could potentially cost her the game. And it looks as though Kith is deciding to run with Packmaster Kith, veteran brother Maxos retreats, a Kith's Chimera Masters stays, and then we get rid of veteran brother Maxos just to be, cautious and careful. And of course, I think that was a very good, obvious play on Guy's part. And now the Chimera Masters are going to be able to do no more than throw a single point of damage onto Captain Cato Sicarius. And as soon as they end up being destroyed, that's going to be another single resource won by Cato. So the Honored Librarian takes a swing, and that is going to be a very dead Chimera Master indeed. Planum is going to be triggered. I can only imagine that that is going to be the Honored Librarian being relocated to our current planet number 2, soon to be planet number 1, the victory condition planet for Glaive Guy. And this is just an incredible match thus far. Two immensely talented players, and this is one hell of a harrowing game. So at the moment, things are looking pretty good for Underdog. And how ridiculous does it sound to me to call Guy Lev an underdog, but that's what he is, and thus he shall therefore be called that. So, Honored Librarian, I can only imagine, is going to be potentially moved over to this planet, but another very appealing target for relocation is also going to be this copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, just because if we end up getting a copy of Chimera Den entering the battlefield, that's going to be 3 Chimera tokens total sitting at this planet, plus an additional token if we see the Chimera Masters put into play there. So is Glaive Guy going to relocate? Okay, looks like he does. I can only imagine it's probably the better play. It's maybe, I don't even necessarily want to call it the less obvious play. So I think he does the right thing. He moves the tactical squad to that planet. Note that our Space Marine, regardless, so long as Cato shows up at this planet, he's going to have initiative unless an Archon's Terror can remove this copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, and Corvus isn't going to be able to draw much in regard to cards, and definitely not going to be able to be too tremendously helpful for this last combat here. He comes across a copy of Void Pirate in Superiority, and if there were anything that would help him seal the win, it is not going to be any of those economy cards. So we're moving through our very slow, kind of manual modified HQ phase, and thank you very much for your patience and bearing with us, our viewers. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to kind of explain exactly how the recording process occurs prior to this match here, but the initiative is now in Cato's hands. Slowly but surely, both of our players came across 4 resources and 2 cards. One of those cards for Glaive Guy was an Honored Librarian. Pretty decent unit to have out on a battlefield, especially when you've got multiple Honored Librarians, when you've got veteran brother Maxos, whom himself cannot be routed, when you've got Tactical Squad Cardenas, which it's definitely safe to call a priority target when you've got your Warlord. And remember, each and every Dark Eldar unit killed is going to be each and every any kind of unit killed is going to be an additional resource for Cato, and thanks to veteran brother Maxos, who need not be ready, that could potentially be another 1/3 of one of these Space Marine units. So just incredibly nasty. Note, Siren Zithlex is just outside of where it really matters for her to be, and now really all Glaive Guy needs to do is be a little bit intelligent with what he plays. Like, really, there's no tremendous impetus to put out too much prior to moving into the command phase. Like, you want to be able to win command at planet number 1, so it would make sense to do an Honored Librarian, but you're also going to want some resources for tricks. Definitely, I don't think it's going to be any issue whatsoever for Cato Sicarius to afford this drop pod assault. He's also got a copy of the Fury of Sicarius, as if he needs even bother to use it. We've got a copy of Promotion out here on this Void Pirates. That means that Guy is going to be able to win command at this planet. I can only imagine that Kith is gonna want to show up to planet number 1 to contribute to this fight, but at this point it is very much a lost battle. We could have Packmaster Kith show up at planet number 3, earn 1 card, 1 resource for herself, deny 2 cards and 2 resources of Guy, but what's the best case scenario? You get a copy of Archon's Terror, you get rid of that copy of Tactical Squad Cardenas, and then just Captain Cato Sicarius is able to absolutely slaughter you. So things are looking very grim indeed for Corvus. I believe this is actually going to be his potential second loss this season, so if you haven't already considered signing up for the online Conquest LCG League, it's definitely not just all incredible players in the league. There have been a monumental number of upsets, a number of underdogs kind of rising to the occasion and reigning triumphant over established, incredibly talented players, and not to speak any ill of Guy whatsoever, but things are looking pretty good for him and pretty grim for our established multiple-time champion. But we're not through this yet. We've got another copy of that Kith's Chimera Masters strategically positioned at the first planet. That's going to be 3 command icons relative to our Space Marine players. 2, we could see another unit like a copy of Sicarius' Chosen or the White Scars Biker. I guess I'll just be very curious to see what ends up happening. I think if it were me, I'd throw the White Scars Biker onto that planet. I'm not too terribly concerned about Corvus being able to do anything cute, like, I guess, a Clavex War Leader. In regard to income, I think his best case scenario is going to be a resource from the first planet, and that is it. So 2 resources isn't looking too terribly good for him. Guy apologizes like a proper sir, saying that there's lots to consider, and there most definitely is. I think it's very safe to say that if any player strikes fear into someone participating in the Black Crusade, it's definitely Corvus. So even if things seem pretty comfortable, you definitely do not want to throw away a chance at victory, and you definitely do not want to make any mistakes whatsoever. So that's going to be a copy of Sicarius' Chosen pulling the Incubus Warrior away from planet number 1. So a very interesting choice, but a very conservative choice. Sicarius' Chosen is kind of throwing away 3 resources and a card, but you get rid of this incredibly frightening unit. Note, Corvus does possess a superiority in hand. He lets that Incubus Warrior die, but because now there's only 1 command icon at this planet, the Chimera Masters are going to be losing command, so that's going to be 1 resource. The command struggle is going to be 1 at this planet, thanks to Cato. Corvus actually puts into play a copy of Slith Mercenaries, so it looks like I spoke too soon in regard to Cato winning command at this planet, but that Sicarius' Chosen did clear out that Incubus Warrior, which, even though it could have been killed by the Tactical Squad Cardenas' Area Effect 1 volley because of superiority and any number of other potential shield cards Corvus could be holding on to, it wasn't exactly a shoe-in. So it looks like Corvus actually throws out the GG, so good game, very well played by both of our players. In the absolute best case scenario, Kith would have maybe shown up at planet number 1, generated a Chimera token, but the Tac Squad Cardenas would have killed off both of those tokens. It would have damaged all of those present Dark Eldar units. That would have been enough resources for Cato to do a drop pod assault. There would have been 2 Honored Librarians present, veteran Brother Maxos, just an absolutely incredible game. So congratulations to Glaive Guy for managing to best a truly incredible player, but of course very well played to Corvus, an immensely talented player indeed. So congratulations to both of our players. Hats off to the 2 of them for putting up with the Octagon automation frustration. So for those of you viewing at home, I very much hope you enjoyed this experience. If you're not currently participating in the present season of Sam Mann's Black Crusade, I definitely encourage you to look into the possibilities of participating during our next next upcoming season, it's only a 1 match a week arrangement that you're agreeing to, and even people such as myself, whom are quite busy with school and quite busy trying to put out 1 video per day, still manage to find time to squeeze in 1 match per week. So, once again, congratulations to Guy, thank you to both of our players, and as always, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, be sure to share this content, because the more individuals there are that end up exposed to this game, the more people may end up picking up Conquest, enjoy what they experience, become faithful contributing members of our community, and of course, all together we continue to send the message to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if at any point you feel so inclined to contribute to my Patreon, I would be very much appreciative of your support, as even $1 or $2 on a strictly monthly basis does absolute wonders to help keep me motivated. It helps cover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, and it really goes the extra mile in just conveying to me that you appreciate this consistent content. So, once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.